Greetings from the wonderful state of Montana. We're coming to you, broadcasting directly tonight here on the beach in the main exhibition hall in the fabulous Billings Unconventional Center. Even though the news cannot actually be packaged, nonetheless, I'd like to point out that tonight's does have a theme. Consistency. The need thereof and its many, 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 many rewards. Now on to the stuff. Although I'm sure it's common knowledge among many of you by now, I'll go ahead and codify it and make it official. The most efficient ways to cover up stupidity are act serious, whine, appear stupid. In which case you'll blend right in and no one will notice. Yet another take on the attempt to ignite one's consciousness to a higher level. There are three ways to bring a runaway train under control. One is to try and bring it under control. Another is to just let it run its course to exhaustion. And a third is to do the first two, then get the hell off. In a land and time far away was once a man who tried to be quite specific, till he finally realized what was going on. Shortly after each person is created, they have a momentary face-to-face direct encounter with life, and those who blink and turn away are given the gift of freedom of will. Although gift is not really the right word, but what the hey, it's just people. Nice, fat, ordinary, juicy people. From our, how come you never think about stuff like this in your spare time department? Men are the only creatures who believe in the existence of things non-physical. Why? Query. Who's the dumbest? Those wanting to change man's behavior or his thinking? Official finding. Define dumb to my full satisfaction. There's a game being played, and man is the field. There's a war being fought, and man is the theater. There's a joke being played, and the serious are the door prizes. The thing about being ordinary is that the best reward you'll ever see is, and forgive me here, being you. The historical model for the concept of child abuse came from the way men treat their mental potential. The fairness doctrine clearly explained it. The universe carries you around in its head, same as you do it. Oh, all right. Really and truly clearly explained. Anyone who actually believes they understand what a mystic is talking about is an idiot. One man said, "My life is an open book, which is why my spine is in such ragged condition." Inquire of yourself. What better synonym for stupidity than seriousness? And also for normalcy, sanity, and upright, uptight mental mediocrity. All mystical schools of enlightenment have, as a convenience for their students, a book by the back door in which they may write their names under the heading entitled, "I don't want to play anymore." And a gentleman asked, is the term mystical schools of enlightenment done in all caps? The byword of comedians is, always leave 'em wanting more. That of the awakened, always leave 'em. from our "it won't do you any good to deny it" department. If you don't know what's going on, you believe in conspiracies. One man collected facts, his brother only opinions. A rat looked in the cat trap and said, "If these are my thoughts, then what's gotten in yours?" Shortly after Eden first caught on fire, the few who escaped were so befuddled that they, for a considerable length of time, believed that things physical had no place in the mind. And a small lizard who had watched the whole affair from Baghdad asked for a clarification as to the term "considerable length of time." And Noah's wife said, "We got here just in the nick of time." Moral: never underestimate the power of anything. Some shouted at him, "Why don't you stop driving those metaphors at us?" And he replied, "It's life's fault. It keeps serving them up to me." As they climbed, some of them sang, "I don't believe in crap, and crap don't believe in me. I don't believe in crap, and toss me up a rope." There was once a man who relied on the validity of direction. That is, until he became aware of what was going on. One man says, "Geez, I'm getting way too human." And life replied, "So what'd you expect?" And the man finally said, "Well, a bit more than this." And eventually life responded, "Just where do you think you are anyway?" At which point the guy decided to terminate the conversation. Postulate. 'Tis misinformative to say that man has a mind. The truth would be better served to say that he has a nervous system capable of mutable focalization. Question: why do men like to mentally live in the past? Answer: so they can say, "The future is of interest to everyone, for that is where we will spend the rest of our lives." Question number 2 on your behalf: is that supposed to make any sense to me? Answer number 2: how should I know? Theorem red angular. Only the here and now is actually dangerous. Why? You want to know why? Well, I'll tell you. Because it's damn near objective and unfeeling, just like you'd like to be. Any more questions? One man was once suddenly struck with the rhetorically based insight, how? How is it possible that I can be more serious than life is? The collective is more given to applaud serendipity and bumbling discoveries than intentional intellectual feats. The dumb cherish and support their own. If cortexes could high jump, philosophers would be on cereal boxes. And the simple would happily chew the day away, just like they do already. Then another man laid down the new law to himself regarding whether he would any longer be allowed to be a part of the secret inner mystery school he had established in himself. The fresh requirement was that he either cease pondering the ideas of others or give up drugs. The shadowy traveler pulled low the brim of his hat, turned off the lights in his compartment, and as he watched the lights and telephone poles pass by the window, wondered quietly to himself, is this Greece or the weekend? A doctor went into a man's office and said, well, don't do that. And the man said, it hurts every time you do that. And another time and another place was a man who once believed in sequence. That is, until he discovered what was actually going on. There was once a kid who found a book filled with impressive ideas. And whenever he read from it aloud and people would listen, he felt more intelligent. People are not dumb. It requires some intelligence to reach that level. Now, a pig who fell off his trapeze, now that'd be dumb. And Mama Galaxy screamed, "If you tell me you don't get it one more time, I'm going to scream." Which, of course, was just the point. And she just did. Yeah, but in spite of all this, several planets, chagrining behind their local cloud cover, still didn't get it. And Mars said to Mercury, "Aren't you glad you're a mythical god and not a world? At least not one unto yourself." And the wing-footed one suddenly thought, well, if not, then what's the use in being a god? And as he fearlessly plummeted toward Earth, the pig confidently reflected on the rising pork prices, in spite of the fact that he didn't understand what this was all about either. One man wanted to sing the song, "I'll Be Loving You Always," but had no one to sing it to. He was not as acquainted with his full potential consciousness as he could have been. How can you tell a young mystic? By the fact that he's serious. How can you spot a mystic who's gotten old? He's serious too. Too late to be included in the party, did he learn that the fifth law of motion had been temporarily suspended. A local ordinance states that he who cannot control his own mind cannot control his own children, which works out in specifics fortuitously, given that those who generally have none non-visible, that is. Given that those who can generally have none. A local ordinance states that he who cannot control his own mind cannot control his own children, which works out in specifics fortuitously, given that those who can generally have none visible, that is. As he hurled stalwartly into the sun, the projecting porker basked in the knowledge and certainty that he had not the least idea of what was occurring. And lo, a great movement, rumbling, then roar, went up from the masses, proclaiming that he, the flying pig, should hereforth be the official representation of man. There was, by way of less than unanimity, however, one man who wondered whether this should be representation of man or representative. There is yet another version of the legend, yet to make the theological bestseller list, that says the first man and woman were driven from the original paradise for acting way too silly. Once they learned to think, that is. Discovered at last, the history of the great secret work is written in P in the snow of the Sahara. This is not the urologist convention, is it? Aphorism update. God must love the common man because he made them so common. Daddy, when I die, can I be somebody else? I certainly hope so, sweets. For everyone's sake, I hope so. Oh, Daddy. Oh, sweetums. Medical news for those totally off the ward. Taking what travels normally through one's mind seriously is like hanging out the window pleading with germs to come and get me. Doctor, doctor, I believe the man in 216 is getting worse. Nurse, nurse, I'm actually a conductor, but as long as I'm here, is that room 216 or a Pullman car? Moral, travel doesn't make you ill. The sudden inability to stop does. There was once a man who spent 40 or 20 years taking it all seriously. That is, until his metaphysical understanding of what is actually, that is, constitutes the serious, was brought into severe doubt when the limo of a local mystic ran over his foot. Well, don't be throwing up all over the back seat. I already warned you about the inability to go ahead and stop, damn it. Are we there yet? One citizen complained to the local mystics licensing board regarding some practitioners' lack of personal grooming and solemnity. It might also be of interest to you, undergraduate rat collectors, to know that every letter ever written to the editors was actually sent in by history. At a later stage in his journey, one man reflected, "If I knew now half as much as I used to know, I'd still be as dumb as I used to be." It's really rather silly, the notion of the secret revealed in the awakening being hidden from man. Yep, pretty silly. Interrogatory. How come you never find yourself sitting on a train or bus next to Buddha or Mohammed? When trapped and confused, rats will appear trapped and confused. Under similar conditions, men will certainly start acting real serious. Any sane person wants to increase their consciousness. Remember, fellow ranchers, 'tis proper for cows not to know nothing. Any sane person wants to increase, forget it. One man said, "I've had about all I can take," and laughed, poked his girlfriend and said, "Hey, can I turn out kidders or what?" Reminder, if anyone tells you to slow down, hold your horses, take it easy, and keep your shirt on, it'll be life. And being the wage-paid ass-kisser it is for life, local conditions butted in to say, "Hey, don't be listening to that kind of shit." Yeah. Rather than actually troubling himself to be more conscious, one guy would just tell people that he used to play trumpet in Little Richard's band. How would you like to go ahead and get strong-armed? Use strong-arm tactics to approach it. How life, from a certain very real view, although I'm sure all of us can by now badmouth criticism as well as the next person, that there is a sense in which once you begin to see beyond the vapors and the exhaust fumes of ordinary intellectual city life, that in one very real sense, life does lie to you. Okay. What it presents to normal view could be quite fairly construed as misleading. Still tied in with what we were discussing 17 tapings back, that if you do not realize that man mentally lives in a closed system, nothing makes sense. Back to life and what goes on. I'm quoting now from a quite serious news item, or perhaps it came from a nature special, but it goes like this. The voiceover I'll do, it showed a young, sincere-looking person in some sort of ranger uniform climbing up this large watchtower. In the background, a large, long range of mountains, and especially one extremely, singularly shaped. And the voice says, "The government is keeping a very close and continual eye on the volcano." Now, all of that sounds meaningful. Now, see, some of you are starting to laugh because you just know I'm fixing to take it apart. But if you were sitting there watching a National Geographic or watching a news item, it could be the same about earthquakes. Well, like the volcano just happened to actually pop up. That the government, and there it is, what they're showing, the reason I threw in the visual part. Here is a man in an official uniform, and he's climbing up this tower. They spent money. They took the people's local taxes. And it's showing. And the voice is quite serious that the government, I mean, we all know that the government's supposed to be your friend if it's not run by some maniacal tyrant. The government is there to benefit the people. And the government generally, men who make no analyzation of life, assume that the government, or they assume any fairly reasonable group of people, are collectively more intelligent than they are. Else why would you put yourself in the hands of any organization, be it the Knights of Columbus, the Catholic Church, the government, a family reunion? So there it is, the man climbing up the tower, this large tower, built at some expense. He's got binoculars around, and they could have some sort of equipment up there. They probably have at least a portable seismograph of some kind. But all sorts of things. They're saying the government. You got to understand, there are people living around there, and it's a small island, small country, whatever. And they're saying the government continues. They keep a continual and close eye on the volcano. And it does. It sounds very meaningful until you think about it. What in the goddamn hell good's it going to do once that volcano starts erupting? That's just a simple fact. Remember that we're not here to play either Parcheesi or critic of life. But I was pointing out how life, you're part of it in that closed system, that you take many things that you just never considered to be serious. And when I say serious, that they have some usable, operational validity. That should be the end of it, at least. Do you hear me? Well, how about, they'll be pointing out the amounts of money spent from government funds, from private endowments, parts of the university system, certain areas of the world. Out in California, it's very common. They're showing people out there, and undergraduate students and people that are tracking. And they'll point out that not only is the state government and the federal authorities, but there's even parts of the University of Southern California or whatever, and it's all kinds of impressive people, guys with doctorates, and you can be watching it, and it's showing how they're out there measuring, and they've set up all seismographs, and they're saying that they now have more money, and they have now placed, they have increased, whereas along the certain areas of St. Andreas Fault, that whereas they used to have only implanted seismograph reading equipment every 2 miles, that now, thanks to some new government funding, they have it every half mile. And they're showing people out there, and they've hired more. They can now offer some daily stipends to undergraduate students to help look after it. And they're talking about how we have now a combination, not only the federal and local, but now parts of the university system, as part of their graduate studies, are keeping a close eye. And it just sounds like, well, I'm glad I live in the 21st century, and it's, until you think about it. An earthquake hits, and what good does it do? Can you spell none? Absolutely none. If you can see it past the way life is supposed to take a man to take life seriously at the intellectual level. I mean, we're talking intellectual level. It's how you get it all at an ordinary level that you stay in that kind of dazed, befuddled condition, because there are two things at work, as always. We have the physical reality of a volcano erupting. Put to it directly, I don't think the most deranged, gin-sotted scientist in the world would say that he sees on the near horizon much possibility of us being able to bring volcanoes under any sort of control. I mean, I'm speaking for them, but even I don't think even geologists with severe tumors, bad haircuts. I mean, volcanoes go off, and all you can do, about the most intelligent thing you can do is just scream like a mother. And if you're really silly, I guess run, according to how close you're living. But you do understand, there is nothing, absolutely nothing you can physically do about that kind of physical reality. And if all this sounds too far afield, how about people studying the question of mortality? Like they're going to cure death. I mean, it's just a hobby, but they don't realize it. But do you consider, you have set all your life, and you're supposed to. It's not because you're stupid, it is you're part of a closed system going nowhere, mentally. Because you have now the two things, you have the volcano. Volcanoes, as the bumper stickers so aptly point out, volcanoes happen. Something like that. Volcanoes erupt, and there is not one thing anyone can do about it. Nothing. But then you do not think about it that way. Then we got to go back to the mental aspect of it. Back to the little film, you have to turn it on, or it can be a National Geographic special, a whole hour about volcanoes, which can be interesting to watch. But what you don't hear, besides just the, perhaps you got your mind turned off and it's just an hour's worth of fairly innocuous entertainment. But what you don't realize is it's not that innocuous. You could believe, as many people do, then it would, if you got to watch television, especially weekend would-be mystics, they might say, well, if you're going to have to watch television, it'd be better to watch a non-fiction like a National Geographic than it is to watch some mindless, violent sitcom or cop show. But what you don't realize is no matter what you're doing in life, life is still going, ooh, ooh. What makes this silly is like they tend to do it to you specifically or something. Being here and not knowing where you are does it. But it is that life is lying. Life is misleading. So there you sit watching the show, and you never think about it. And it can seem interesting, and you might think, well, I should go back. I've got a book on geology, or, this is interesting. It's good to kind of refresh the mind, have something to do. And you don't notice all the things about volcanoes. The very thing I refer you back, it just slides right through because it is mentally here. It is absolutely unsupportable. To call it foolish is charitable. That is the fact. Everything inclusive, everything that is a ramification and an offshoot, everything that implies by the statement that I quoted, the government of Indonesia, of wherever, that keeps a close and constant eye on Volcano Miranda. And there's a guy climbing up, and good shots, and it's showing the smoke, and you can already call it on. I don't have to tell you much more, but it goes on. It smolders, and it never dies. The people living close, and they show little villages, and then they say, well, as far as records go, the last recorded eruption was 1897, and so many people were killed, and villages wiped out, and they talk about how it enriched the soil and all. But they say, the government has not simply laid down on the job. And the people want to live there because the soil's enriched and this and that. And it all sounds as though this has some meaning. You understand? That they're watching. They have built these things. Or if you like, take the earthquakes, either one, that they are now increasing the number of people involved in watching them. Watching for earthquakes. That is, they see this thing start. The seismograph. I don't know how it looks when it's doing like a 7.5. I guess they call Mr. Richter and say, are you sure that's the way, They start seeing that, and what are you going to do? There's a man with a PhD, 20 years of earthquake watching. And now for the first time he sees this thing, and an assistant hollers, Professor, you better come over here, and he looks, and the damn thing is about to jump past 10. And 20 years of good experience and education, experience in studying, and I would assure you about the best, if he still has any sanity, being an educated man, but if he has any sanity, he's going to look and go, God damn, and run. Because there's not one thing he can do. Not one. Besides, I know the little silliness now, or you may think it is, if I had somebody here always playing this game, you understand the purpose by now, that's all intellectual to you. It doesn't mean me actually involved with other people. But if I had somebody here, an ordinary person, a good, sane, educated person, they would follow along this far. They could go, yeah, but wait a minute. Still, the point is that we're collecting new data, they're getting new information to make it easier, that their predictions are more valid. And that almost sounds like, well, you're right, or he's right. He's not right. They got more information, they got more statistics. They can tell you after the earthquake now. They're as good at that as the daily weatherman, who can fearlessly and accurately predict what happened yesterday, the weather. He can forecast yesterday's weather. They can say, well, we got more statistics. Used to, we thought the earthquakes hit this area, southeast, the general southeast area from the San Bernardino Valley, that it normally, the best we could conclude, it was hitting a major, something past a 4.7 on the Richter scale, was hitting once every 20 years. But now, due to increased statistics and earthquake watching, we now know that they happen more on the order of 17 years. And again, you don't listen, you think, well, it sounds like we're getting somewhere. No matter how many statistics they get, once an earthquake hits, I assume all of you know this, they know it. But it's just beyond the pale of them looking it dead in the face. For one thing, they'd be out of work. But no matter how many statistics they get, no matter how much data they get, no matter how many earthquakes they now can observe and plot as and after they happen, you do know they can say, well, we can pretty safely predict that one's going to happen in the next 12 months. You call that prediction? What good is it? You do understand? What good does that do? They tell everybody in Los Angeles, we have now, let's go forward maybe 50 years. They've got even more statistics. And they got it down now, not only 17 years, and they say we can safely predict. We can almost guarantee. Because the weatherman can almost guarantee in the next month it will rain, no matter where you are, this side of the Sahara. They say we can almost guarantee. Now we can tell you, for those of you that laughed and thought we were wasting some of the taxpayers' money, we can now all but, well, of course, science cannot guarantee anything, but we can all but guarantee you that here in the Los Angeles area will be a earthquake within the next 12 months. And again, you could be an ordinary person sitting there and think, it's great to live in times like this, and science, even though we're still plagued by physical calamities, I mean, it's good that we're making that kind of progress. Are you an idiot? You hear what I'm trying to point to? That it does sound as though if you're ordinary, if you're sane and educated, in fact, the more sane and educated you are, the more credence, the more importance you give to this. They say, we can now. Some of you may remember, I'm speaking for the expert, some of you may remember it was less than a decade ago that the best we could do, I can still recall my own mentor, the man I studied under, the best we could do was him say that it is safe to assume that sometime within the next 20 years there will be a major, probably at least in excess of a 4.5 earthquake will hit the greater Southern California area. 20 years, but today, even though science is not in the job of playing Nostradamus precisely, we can now tell you safely, as sad as it, but we can safely predict, if you'd like to use that word, that within the next 12 months will be a major earthquake here. And you could be watching it, everyone around him, but you could be watching that and think, it's good to be an American. It's good to live in the 21st century. It is absolutely meaningless when it gets down to reality, when it gets down to physical reality, not mental reality, because that kind of mental reality, I'm saying we are making great progress, and we're proud today to make a major announcement in the area of earthquake predictions. And here's Dr. So-and-so. It is all quite serious. It is meaningless, though. At the mental level, it is serious to them. But you do understand, they're going to predict an earthquake. They can guarantee you there'll be one in the next 12 months. And let's assume that you live there. Of what good is that to you? Do we want to stop where everyone puts their heel on their desk or thinks about it? You live there and they predict in the next 12 months there'll be an earthquake. Of what use is that to you other than none? Does that about cover it? None. Does my opening make any more sense? That life in a quiet, from a non-standard view, a completely out of the normal run of the citizenry view intellectually, life is continually lying to you. And those of you who like it better, misleading you. Because you sit right there and you listen to things that sound to be of extreme importance. Well, volcano eruptions. Because they can take it, they can present to you that not only is it going to affect the poor people living there at the foot of Mount Miranda, if it erupts, but we now, again, thanks to science and more statistical info, we now know that that kind of eruption not only will affect that general southern area of the Pacific Rim, it can, once it gets up there and starts fooling around with the ozone layer and that other stuff, it can have dire consequences to people as far away as here in Montana. And you can think, well, that's good to know. I mean, years ago they didn't know that. And if you didn't know that, they'll point it out to you. They go, years ago we had no idea. The only thing we saw in our limited range back in the middle of the 20th century, all we saw with the volcano was the immediate damage done to the local inhabitants and the local environment. But now we see that months later, You understand? Months later we can predict because of the kind of rising ash, and it can affect the weather patterns as far away as the other side of the world months later. And you can be listening to that and think, God, that's amazing. What could be more useless? Absolutely, totally useless. If you take it outside, as they would call it, the mental, scientific realm, which means it doesn't have anything to do with me physically. All right, well, it has something to do with you physically, but not on the basis that the mind says, well, we're going to work on this problem and do something about it. That is, we'll do something about how it affects you physically. And the world is full of, can you spell down near 6 billion, people stupid enough that they're, well, let's hear it. There's nothing to do about it. Or you see, you missed it again if you're listening just with your ordinary mind, because you took what the mind says about its own closed game, which it doesn't realize is operating in a closed playing field, and it has made yet another mental horse come around the merry-go-round, and it appears to be a new color. They say they're painting a new color, and this will finally cure the problem of the horses that went before whose color you didn't care for. That is, the new statistical information. I say, well, what the mind's playing has no effect on you physically. And again, if I had my ordinary minds here, and they go, wait a minute, you just said that the volcano eruption now could have something to do with you. You could be living as far away as the other side of the world, and months later, what happened over in Indonesia or on the other side of the world, that volcano eruption now affects you physically. So don't tell me what they're working on to have any effect. It almost sounds right. Until you go, you mean because they know it, it's going to have some effect. You understand? Carried about one sentence past that, and any ordinary sane mind would absolutely dismiss the whole affair. You know, I'm not going to talk to you, you're nuts. Yeah. You're not playing the game right. Life is continually, for those of you that may have at least rhetorically wondered, and if not, I'll do it for you, my continual assault on being serious. There are several levels of seriousness. One is you got to be serious physically. If not, you're an idiot, you're suicidal. So you got to be serious by any definition physically. You eat, you sleep, you don't drink poison. Other maybe a few hours on Saturday. Recreational liquid poison or inhalable. But you take life physically serious. And that's it. It's not a hobby, it's what I keep saying. Health is not a fit hobby for a more alert person. And of course, I don't mean health, I mean the concern, the fretting over health. You're going to die. All you do is you're serious and you're reasonable physically. I mean, to take it beyond that point, to concern yourself beyond that point is to absolutely distract yourself from any possible extension of consciousness. And it belies any extraordinary effort or even intelligence that you have. Health is not a hobby. You do the best you can and then screw it. I mean, that's life's attitude toward you. If it's good enough for life, hey, it ought to be good enough for you. You're going to die, so what do you want? So you got to take life physically serious. And if you're sane at all, you do. Now we're into the matter of intellectually. It is there that since this whole affair of awakening one's consciousness to another level, to enlightening oneself in the nervous system, and to ignite it in a different way than is normally provided, you have got to see that life is not furnishing you the fuel. It is just not out there. You do not walk around and suddenly run upon faggots. That was a test to see how many people knew anything about the great French language. It was good enough for Joan of Arc's feet to be roasted by. Run across suitable firewood then. You can look up later in your spare time or else someone else's. You do not walk around finding the kind of fuel. Life does not lay it around to help you see past what's going on. It's not a conspiracy unless you're stupid, and then it is a conspiracy. That's the only answer. It is not a conspiracy, but life does not leave out information to show that what it is doing is like shadow plays on a wall. To show that, such as, the government is increasing. It's increasing its efforts to keep a close and constant eye on that volcano. And it just sounds as important. I could have backed it up for a little bit in a certain way and may turn that into a religious thing, which I was hesitating to do, but now you should be able to do it yourself. That's been the all-encompassing historical umbrella of life playing a game. But here it is. We're offering a way out. We're offering real help. Not just a volcano, not from earthquakes, but from death. Religion. Except it is in the same ball game. All you've got to do is say, wait a minute, what good does it do? None. But then they're supposed to go, well, that's not the point. Again, that conversation would terminate there, because then you'd say, well, in that case, pray tell, what is? You must be some sort of atheist. Get out of here. That's all you can do. You must not believe in science. I believe in science, you might say. I don't know why you would. You'd say, but I tell you what I really believe in. Maybe we should make that our new mystical. I know Masons and old Sufis and people used to have all kinds of, maybe that should be the new one. That'll be our new mystical, ritualistic symbolism. I assume all of you understand what I'm talking about. It's just point blank, look at life. Go, hi, there it is. Could you give us some symbolic representation of being more awake? Yes. Life does not leave out the kind of information to deny, to interfere with the illusion, with the reality it is now presenting to human minds, or the reality that human minds now perceive. Take it either way you like. And it's silly, that's why I throw it in every now and then to say, well, it's not a conspiracy. You know it's not a conspiracy. And yet life does not leave out information. It's things move at a kind of consistent, sequential, from 3D views, manner. And therefore life does not have a general conception of reality going on in human minds, and then to a large degree have something laying over there that conflicts with it. It simply does not. Just think about it from any ordinary view of efficiency. If it ever starts doing it, I was going to make some serious statement like, you better run for your life because life's falling apart. But then if you think it's silly running from a volcano, holler, hey, life's falling apart, let's make a run for it. Right, be right with you, right behind you. Assuming you really enjoy useless jogging. It is simply, you can look at from all kinds of scientific, mathematical, logical, consistent views. Life does not leave out, life does not have available conflicting scenarios to the general one that men take as being reality of all sorts, religious, scientific, psychological, sociological. And of course I know that you could say almost everybody has a slightly different picture of reality, but if you're sane, then you are a part of the collective assumption of reality wherever you live. If you're an Italian, 1995, you have whatever's, you understand that by now. And so there's not large chunks of a different scenario of other information laying around in conflict with that. And right past that again is, if you need any other wonderment or ponder, the great consisting or continual idea in many people's minds that there is secret information. There's real information that's not available in life and it's being hidden. Yeah. Which does fit what I just said. Life does not leave around a whole bunch of conflicting possibilities or conflicting info, even conflicting theories. What if all the great scientific, what if all of Buddha's enlightenments, all that sorts of things, all of the Lao's insights, all the great mystical enlightened discoveries and realizations of all time, what if they were all none of that? They were simply theories. Just opinions and theories that Buddha, Muhammad, and Confucius and everybody else had. Okay? What if it was just that? Notice this. Life does not even allow or provide large segments of conflicting theories. It allows some, but notice this. They're always of such a nature that the majority go, have you ever heard such a crackpot theory as that? So they can allow that. That's like an elephant can tolerate fleas. Not fleas the size of Volkswagens, though. Lawn tractors, no. Fleas, they can tolerate that. So you have naturally flowing therefrom the idea that there's secret information, which is what I'm trying to talk about again tonight, not attacking the world of geology and seismology. But I was trying to pick out something that seems to be a modern, up-to-date, more so than many people's idea of religion and psychology, but science and government, which are now almost the successors of religion, psychology, and sociology. But here it is, everything included. We've got physical, the impending or possible physical calamity, this volcano right there, and we have the government. And we have man's collective energy here. Here's a guy trumping up, he's replacing one guy. They're there 24 hours a day up here in this, and they finally show that the whole volcano is now surrounded, and they're working on more. 10 years ago, they only had 2 observation towers. And they're showing, they go down, they show how high up they are and all the trouble. And like they're building them higher now, just to get a better view of the volcano. And all that sounds like progress until you think, that volcano goes. Here's all these people in these fine towers. They're closer and closer. And it starts to go, and they all holler, Hubert, I'm getting the hell out of here. And they're diving off. They're running, screaming. You understand that? It is absolutely physically moot, which renders the whole intellectual area foolish, if you want to look at it that way. Silly. I mean, what can you call it? And yet you sit there and you listen, and they say, here it is. In the last 20 years, the government has built they have increased the number of observation towers. In quantity, they have increased the number 220%. And they have qualitatively increased the height of each existing tower another 20 feet. And it shows guys there, and they're in their uniform, paid by taxpayers' money, official seals, maybe a gun. I always like them carrying a gun while, I don't know, maybe the volcano starts smoking too much and the guy goes, hey. That's almost too funny, but it's no. It's according to how you look at it. That's no more funnier than he shoots one bullet, which maybe costs the taxpayers 50 cents. And then you consider that all the government has spent out of your pocket, if you were living there on the island, is a man to $50 million. But they point out, and you're sitting there, again, I want you to hear me. You know this is not just for the sake of making fun or being sarcastic. You would sit right there, as you should. I'm using you now generically as a sane, ordinary person, and you're listening to this, and it is impressive. No matter what you call it, you're interested in it. And I'm having to put the names on it after the fact because you would not sit there and analyze it. But it's life weaving this. It is life's presentation and man's collective assumption of what reality is, and not just reality, but progress, meaningful reality, meaningful little blurps on the screen of reality. That here it is. I mean, as horrible as it is, volcanoes, and we know, by God, they can be a real downer. I mean, if you live close to them. As horrible as they are, here it is. I'll go back and do it again. They're showing the guy climbing up. He's relieving. There's another guy up there, and they're pointing out that now they have enough money, and perhaps they've secured some loans from the UN, or they now have the men manning the stations, the observation stations around this volcano that has done so much damage in past decades. They have now men manning the stations 24 hours a day, and they have increased the number. And you're sitting there listening, and they have increased the number of stations, and it's beautiful view there, the jungle and the volcano and the little smoke, and it swings around, and while the voiceover is going, it shows, whereas only 20 years ago they had but 7 observation towers, they now have increased it to the point that they have 28, and they're going around showing, and now some of them are within sight of one another. They now have walkie-talkies, and they're showing all this, and you're listening. The volcano goes. Do we have to go through this again? It just starts going. What does any of that mean? Any of it. Any of it. Nothing. Does it do one iota of good? Does it have any impact on that volcano going off? Now, I know it sounds silly when I keep doing this, but does the volcano start to erupt and then looks out and goes, my God, I'm surrounded by watchtowers? Now, CF this. MFs. CFers. Compare this. Men fretting over and studying, as they call it, the workings of their mind, their thoughts. I ought to go back and kick around Socrates' sorry ass. Well, of course, he claimed he was just quoting. A life is not worth living in which a man did not strive to know himself. That still sounds great. Now, of course, you know what it means. It does sound great for 15 seconds. It normally takes like 30 years to get it all kind of straightened out, but then it's good for 15 seconds. It was like the one kind of mangled it, I think, about a man sort of get the idea of being impressed by mystical aspects when a local mystic's limo ran over his foot. What if you know that you're going to get hit by traffic? No. And you're going to sit there and watch traffic go by all day and wonder which one's going to get you? Or maybe you check your horoscope, or you have the stick stone, and some guy claims that he can read the I Ching, and he says, I see red. It's red. It's red with letters on it. Does that mean anything? You say, yeah, I've always been afraid I'd be hit by a truck. He says, that's it. It's a truck. You go, my God. And so then you can spend the rest of your life, or at least some considerable length of time, and you sit there and you look at traffic, and you keep looking. It sounds as though it's important to study one's mind. And if you were just listening, tuned in some of this, and listening, I guess, half-assedly, you could think, well, that's what you're talking about. Wrong. That's the difference between people playing around the maypole and kids who grease it properly and at least put it off until August or September. Yeah. Traffic's going by. That's very important. You could get killed by traffic. True. In fact, you will get killed by traffic. And if not that, a volcano. And if not that, an earthquake. And if not that, Gruber's syndrome. But you're going to die. But men studying their thoughts, the government now is keeping a close and constant eye on that volcano. And you think, well, by God, that's good to know. That's silly to know. You might as well hear, well, they're not going to make any more Roadrunner cartoons. I mean, that's it. You've seen the last one. It has the same importance. It has the same significance. I know I got a little oblique and testy at the end, but that's the way I intended it. Because you could think from some of this, or you could have already been reading philosophy and ideas that you thought were mystical traditions, and even the whole idea of meditation, the great Zen tradition, to use that one, of sitting and trying to still the mind by watching and studying. When you start getting into translations, I was throwing it in, it starts saying things about study. You didn't ask me, but I'm going to tell you the translation is beginning to have serious universal joint problems. You just don't hear it. You hear study. And of course, psychology, if you want to jump slightly, but still into a scientifically, socially, collectively acceptable, serious area, is that it's important what people think. Especially if you're troubled at all, it's to realize what kind of dreams and what kind of bad thoughts you're having. Damn traffic, you know. Something will kill me if I don't watch it. You're right. But think about it. So watching it's going to cure it. How about this? What if you constantly watch for death? Could you stall it off? If I have to go that far with you people, you're too childish to even deal with. But consider the government. We got the same story. Instead of the man climbing up to watch the volcano, that the government is now keeping 24 hours a day, which is better than you can do, but think about the original. The government is spending. The government now is keeping a close and continual watch on that volcano. That is the same thing as all forms of introspection. It's the same thing as all forms of misdirected meditation. Because if you know what you're doing, it's not to watch. The damn thing erupts constantly. You let it erupt. The thing is then consciously is to be somewhere else. Any place else. Which is my story. I know it began to beg the authenticity and strength of metaphors, but they need to have to beg. When I point out about children can play around the maypole, that's studying your mind. That's thinking, if I knew myself a bit more, if I had just a bit more statistical information, I could stop those damn earthquakes. Are you an idiot? That was a little drama here at the end. Are you an idiot? It's a waste of time. You can study them forever. You can study. You can have the full faith of the church, of psychology, of the government behind you. They could decide, we're going to take up your cause. And we've now got volcanoes and earthquakes pretty much under careful watch. All right, we're interested in you. We're going to take up your case. And you go, well, I just keep trying to be more conscious. I keep trying to get rid of, it's like almost, bad traffic and chatter and almost sometimes demons, figuratively speaking, in my mind and my thoughts. And I go, all right, we're going to help. We'll throw in at least part of the way to the government here. We'll help you study the matter. You think, well, thank God. Thank God for what? Did you miss it again? No. You can play around the maypole. The maypole's there. You're born to the maypole. The maypole is in the middle of everyone's Garden of Eden. You begin to speak and to think, and rather than take the story and the picturization that you're thrown out of the garden, you begin to dance around the maypole. The maypole does not go away, unless you want to call death making it go away. The maypole is there. Traffic goes by. Studying traffic, what's that going to do? If I study it long enough, maybe I'll have success my uncle does. My uncle is a seismologist. Oh, well, you're right. Well, I think there's actually, they have a more history. They have a longer track record in the area of seismology than they do traffic control. Yeah, you're right. But if I could just aspire to half the success they've had, gotcha. I'll describe something just this side, just at least a few seconds, if you want it that way, this side of actual enlightenment. It's understanding that you can sit in the towers forever. You can place all sorts of equipment along. When the thing erupts, when the quake hits, it hits. There's nothing you can do about it. Why would any sane person be so deluded and waste their time otherwise? There is nothing specifically to study in the workings of the human mind. There is this. Get the hell out of the way. Grease it. Do not hold it. Do not entertain it. Don't take traffic seriously. Yeah, but then you think, well, some of it you must take seriously. Some of it could be a priest car. It could be a rabbi going by. It could be a car. It could be that red truck with the lettering that might have my metaphysical, numerological, astrological number on it. Maybe, so what? Yeah, but if I watch out for it, yes. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, I gave him short shrift because that's the guy's uncle who watches volcanoes. In fact, I got to give him full credit. He's also got a cousin who works in the Hurricane Bureau down in Miami Beach. So we're not playing with children here. Any of you who still find that too far afield, if you don't like government and seismologists, how about psychiatrists, priests, rabbis, gurus? How about cutting the tape? Buy from Billings. Surf's up.